Hello, today we're going to talk about proper squatting technique, and we have a couple athletes here that are going to help us. And the first thing we're going to talk about is bar placement on the back of the athlete and foot position and hand position so that we can execute the squat in a safe manner. Zach, if you get underneath the bar for us. We want to put our athlete in right in the middle of the bar, and we want that bar before you take it off to be a little bit lower on the back so that we don't touch any cervical spine, and therefore we can find a spot about where the traps are, and that allows him to comfortably have the bar on his back without any excessive pressure on his cervical spine. His hands are in it. We tell him to be comfortable with your hands so that we're not too tight to be constricted, and yet we're not too wide where our hands could possibly get injured when we put the bar back in the rack. Zach's in a really good position here. He's going to simply lift the bar up off the rack. He's going to take approximately 2 steps back in this rack situation where he assumes his stance prior to the actual lift. When we assume our stance, we like to have our athletes get an athletic position where their feet are approximately hip width, or sometimes I tell them they can put their feet underneath their armpits. Now, that'll also change a little bit. Every athlete, every lifter usually has their own style, as you'll see when our next athlete comes in here and does the same thing. But once Zach's feet are about hip width, he adjusts his toes to a little bit of an angle outward, not too much. Actually, 8 to 10 degrees is perfect. We don't want it too wide, and yet we don't want it straight ahead, and we surely don't want our feet pigeon-toed before we execute our lift. Also, before we start any kind of downward movement, I want to make sure our kids have proper posture and that their eyes are straight ahead, which gives us what we call as a neutral neck and allows our spine to stay in a neutral position while standing at full extension in good posture. All right, we're going to continue talking about the bar placement on our lifters' backs this afternoon, and also our stance and posture before we begin our initial squatting movement. Chris, if you get underneath the bar for me. We have a little taller athlete than our other one, so there's a little bit of different dynamics, but the fundamentals are the same. Before he comes off the bar, I want to reiterate that the bar is not touching any cervical spine, and we want to achieve that position on the back where the traps are. Chris is going to take the bar off. Like our last, he's going to take about 2 steps back. He's going to assume about a hip width stance, and his toes are going to be out slightly. He's going to have good posture. His eyes are going to be straight ahead, which allows him to have a neutral position for his spine and his neck before we begin lifting. Before we begin the actual lift, we've already talked about our bar placement and our stance and our posture. So, Zach, if you get underneath the bar and take a step out, we're going to go ahead and talk about our initial phase of squatting and some key clues that we use, some clue words that we use. The first one of which, before we start any kind of downward movement in our squat, we want to make sure our athletes set their hips back, which allows them to get their spine in proper position and allows them to train for the utmost power and the utmost safety and keeping that good spinal angle throughout the entire movement. So, Zach, if you go ahead and set your hips for us, we're going to demonstrate a hip set by just pushing your hips back, and then he's going to go ahead and complete. He's going to do our downward movement in our squat for about 2 counts, in 1,001, 1,002 down, and then he's going to actually extend up with the same kind of tempo. So Zach, go ahead, set your hips and sit. And if you hold it at the bottom for me, Zach, he's maintaining a really nice spine angle here. His femur is approximately parallel to the ground. Now come on up. And he's going to come up to full extension when he finishes. Make sure that we drive our hips forward as we finish the lift, and he gets in full triple extension posture. Go ahead, Zach, let's do another one. Set your hips back, sit, and his knees are approximately over his toes, which is perfect. Come on up. His spine maintains the spinal integrity that we have to have in a perfect squat. Good, one more, Zach. Set his hips, sit, and he comes up. And now we're going to put the bar back in the rack. Obviously, we like to have spotters. We're not using one today, but we always have spotters in our classroom and athletic situations. Okay, we're going to talk about our actual squat right now after we've already talked about bar placement and posture. Chris, if you'd go ahead and take the bar off the rack. Now, Chris is a little taller than my other lifters, and I just want to reemphasize to you that all your athletes and or students, they're all going to have different styles. They come in all shapes and sizes, but the fundamentals are still the same. Chris has real nice posture. He's ready to go. His eyes are straight ahead. Set your hips for us, Chris. He's going to set his hips, and now I want you to hold it at the bottom. Go ahead and do your squat. And he's going to hold that nice spine angle at the bottom of the movement. His femur is parallel to the ground. His knees are above his toe, or right about where his toes are. Go ahead, come up. And that's just really solid, nice, safe, good squat. Go ahead, Chris, give me another one. You don't have to hold it this time. 1,002. He's coming up off the ground. Also, we want a sensation of pushing with your heels at the bottom of the lift when he comes back up and finishes extending his hips, knees, and ankles to finish the lift. Go ahead, Chris, put it back. Thank you. Okay, now the last segment we're going to talk about this morning, Zach, go ahead and take the bar off, is how we're tracking our knees and our femur and our lower legs so that everything's in alignment, so that we don't have anything going on with our legs and they're not stable. So if you hold at the bottom for me, Zach, go ahead and squat down. If you'll notice, his kneecap is right over his second toe. He's in perfect alignment, which allows him to develop more power, and it's also the safest way to execute the squat from the downward movement up. Go ahead and get up, Zach. Give me a couple more. Down one, up, good. Down again, up, good. And let's do one more. And notice also his vision, his eyes are straight ahead. Go ahead and put the bar back. His eyes are straight ahead so that his spine stays in a neutral position. Okay, again, we got a second lifter here. Again, he's a little bit taller, and his dynamics are a little different, but however, the fundamentals are the same always. Chris, if you go down one time and hold it for me at the bottom. Again, look at his kneecaps, look at his patella, and it's relative to his second toe. We want to really look at that line of force. Go ahead and come up as he executes the squat. Go ahead and do me two more, please, Chris. Nice. And one more. And up. Very good. Everything's in alignment, everything's safe, and his power lines are really, really good.